Hello and welcome back to another fan rebooking for the WWF/E. Today we're going to be doing WrestleMania 3. Now let's kick off by going back to the prior video for the aftermath as a recap. So we ended off with Paul Orndorff defeating Roddy Piper for the World Heavyweight Championship. Orndorff turning heel as he did in actual real life, and revealing that his new tag partner is going to be Jake Roberts, who we've been starting to build up as kind of this evil mastermind, kind of a taskmaster figure, similar to what he was involved with Florida and Kevin Sullivan. And his motivation was getting revenge on Piper, teaching him a lesson. So he throws down the belt, because he never wanted the belt. He didn't care about it. He just wanted to get back at Piper. And now he's going to settle his score with Hogan, because he's tired of him sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. Which kicks off the real-life feud between Orndorff and Hogan, which was one of the most profitable feuds Hogan ever had. Unfortunately, it was never televised, really. It never made it to a pay-per-view. It's one of those things that it was hugely successful, the feud between Orndorff and Hogan, but history has kind of forgotten it because there's no WrestleMania match or another pay-per-view, because they only did WrestleManias at that point. We're talking 86, 87 here. So they're going to have their feud in the year between WrestleMania 2 and 3. Piper was leaving to do some other things, but he's going to come back, and he finds, again, they had some good feuds and stuff going on that actually were good. I'm not going to change things just for the sake of changing them if it was actually good in real life. It's kind of my take on doing this rebooking thing. It's more to improve upon the stuff that they could have actually improved upon if they had put some more effort into doing those feuds and not just focusing on one or two things over the course of a whole year, practically. So it's going to be Adrian Adonis, Brutus, and Orton teamed up, and they've taken over Piper's Pit and turned it into the T-show thing. And those three are going to repeatedly humiliate Piper, and Steamboat and Junkyard Dog are going to end up teaming up with Piper, because Piper's turned face, and they're going to team up against the other three, which is going to start setting up some matches. Then again, the feud between Hogan and Andre, wildly successful. Far too many people play the success, all the credit always seems to go to Hogan, although if you actually look at WrestleMania numbers, it was always who he was up against that really sold the tickets. It was Andre that sold all those tickets, not Hogan. I don't like Hogan. I'll never like Hogan. I'll give him some credit. But again, if you actually look at the numbers, it was who he was feuding with that sold the tickets, not him. It never was him. It was Andre turning heel for the first time in at least the WWF career, his WWF career, that sold all those tickets. Hogan made a good crybaby for him to beat up until he, to be an underdog. But, I mean, this is a bit of a tangent. It's just that I get annoyed when so many people just give Hogan all the credit for everything. But again, you actually look at the numbers. It was Andre, it was Piper, it was Andre, it was Savage, it was Warrior that made Hogan, on the WrestleManias at least, it was who he was up against that made the matches and sold the tickets. Hogan did not do it all by himself, is the point here. Anyway, same basic story. Andre's getting a party. Hogan steals all the spotlight, as he always does. That's what he does all the time anyway. Andre gets pissed off. They start feuding. Andre fully turns heel. Bobby Heenan joins in and also helps sell a lot of the tickets. Only the difference is that we're going to try to help Andre get into better shape before we get to WrestleMania. There's going to be a tournament to crown a new champion. Steamboat's going to win the belt. So Steamboat's going to be going into WrestleMania 3 as the world champion. If you've watched the prior videos, then you would know that when I started this particular exercise, I didn't create it. I brought back the U.S. World title. Well, the USA title, basically, heavyweight title, to give to Hogan. Because Hogan didn't really need the world title. He just needed something that could be his little toy. He needed a blankie. Hogan needed his blankie. So I decided to give him the U.S. belt to be his blankie. And we could reserve the world title for the more serious wrestlers. Because again, if you didn't watch the first one, the exercise of all this is that Vince McMahon, in this version of reality, does not hate pro wrestling and calling it pro wrestling. He simply wanted to create something a bit more 80s. And he decided to hire somebody. In this case, it's my rebooking, so he hired me when I was a little tiny child. It's fantasy rebooking. What you gonna do? I was born in 82. When all this stuff was going down, I was a toddler. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter at all. Anyway, so the idea is that McMahon doesn't hate pro wrestling, and he decided that Hogan was going to be his superhero guy, but he was also going to give people what they, that want pro wrestling. He was going to give them guys like Steamboat and a more serious product, if you will, which is the world title and really the other titles. Hogan gets to be Mr. He-Man and do the cartoony stuff, and some of the other guys will follow that pattern, and some will be more serious and try to mesh it all together. So anyway, so Steamboat has won the world title in the tournament, and he's going to be going into WrestleMania 3 as world champion. The Bulldogs feud with various teams for the belts. Unfortunately, Dynamite Kid will be injured towards the end of 86, and they will have to drop the belts eventually. As I understand the story, he injured his back, did not drop the belts immediately, tried to muscle through, failed, and eventually had to get healed up. So they had to drop the belts, and we had them drop them to the Hart Foundation during the year. And Jake Roberts is going to be part of Orndorff's feud with Hogan. And we're going to, over the course of the year, we're going to continue to build his cred as an evil mastermind, as well as letting him chew up some baby faces in singles competition. So that is where we left off after WrestleMania 2 and going into that year. So let's go ahead and get to WrestleMania 3 now that we've set things up. So coming into WrestleMania 3, which of course takes place earlier in the year of 87, coming in, Paul Orndorff, who we've built up as one of our top heels, we lose because he, again, in real life, I am following who could have actually been at these events. They had to have been working for WWF and not injured, is my criteria. Because I'm not going to just cherry pick out talent from all over the country or the world who couldn't actually have been there. So this is fantasy rebooking, but with rules. Again, the basic premise is more of an attitude adjustment for Vince McMahon, and what he's presenting is his WWF product, rather than just going totally rogue. Orndorff hurts his arm during his feud with Hogan, does not get it cared for, which ends up basically destroying his career because it resulted in nerve damage because he didn't get it taken care of for so long. And if you saw Orndorff later in his career, one of his arms, the one he had injured, is much smaller than his other arm. It looks rather strange, actually, but that's because of nerve damage and muscle atrophy. So he has his feud with Hogan, and because of the injury, he's gone. He's not going to be there for WrestleMania 3. Dynamite Kid's back is fucked in late 86. And in the WrestleMania 2 rebooking, we had the Funks, Dory and Terry Funk Jr., in a match. They were actually at WrestleMania 2, of course, under a different name for some stupid reason. But we had them there as the Funk Brothers, but they're gone. So we're going to start off with some dark matches, because Dynamite Kid is gone. We're going to have Hillbilly Jim and Davey Boy Smith taking on Demolition, who are just now starting to really come up. And we're going to have Demolition Axe and Smash win, because we're building them. Billy Jim and Davey Boy Smith are going to just be a tossed-together tag team. And my notes here for this particular match are, pardon me, since Dynamite was still very much fucked from his back injury, he's off the show. Our version of Vince is more sensible and didn't allow Dynamite back in the ring at all following his injury. Davey Boy can have a throwaway match with Jim to put over how dangerous Demolition are, and set up a feud for later when Dynamite is healed up. So we're putting over Demolition, helping to build up their cred, and giving Davey Boy Smith a payday, something to do, when otherwise he would have to sitting on, bench warm. And, we're getting some utility out of a couple of guys that otherwise I think, Dynamite, I think in the original lineup we've got over here, yeah, the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana had a 6-man match with Dangerous Danny Davis, who was a heel referee. And they could still be doing this stuff, the Dangerous Danny Davis stuff. They could still go ahead and do that with the Hart Foundation. It's just, people have died and been crippled because of not taking care of injuries. And in our version of reality for this rebooking, that's not going to happen. So again, I'm not saying the Dangerous Danny Davis stuff, which actually was pretty good, can't happen at all, or shouldn't happen at all, or wouldn't happen at all, just maybe in a different context. So our second dark match is going to be Butch Reed and Dino Bravo with Slick versus the Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond Rougeau. And part of that is that I wanted to free up some time on the main event, the main show, rather. Because if you actually look at it here, you've got 12 matches at WrestleMania 3, 5:37, 7:44, 3:25, 4:22, 4 minutes, 30 seconds, 6:33, 8:52, 3:49, 14:35, 7:04, 5:24, or 5:44, and 12:01. There isn't a single match that goes over 15 minutes. I'm not saying you have to have long-ass matches, especially during the 80s, but wouldn't it be nice to actually let things breathe a little bit for some of these? You know, cut out some of the BS and actually have some more meat. So basically, you know, I cut out the Rougeau brothers, and I didn't cut them out. I just put them in a dark match with Butch Reed and Dino Bravo, who were Rougeau brothers up against originally. It was originally the Dream Team, which was Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine, but with Dino Bravo and Johnny Valiant. So, but because I put Brutus with Adonis and Orton, you know, I've had to adjust some things. So, you know, the Rougeau brothers still have a match, and Butch Reed and Dino Bravo, who Butch Reed I took out of, let's see, the match with Coco Beware because we're using Coco as part of the trio with Steamboat Piper going up against the heels there. So, you know, we some things have been shifted here. So now we're going to come to the main show. Our first match, our opening match, is going to be the Can-Am Connection, Rick Martel and Tom Zink, up against the Islanders, Haku and Tama. And in real life, Haku and Tama, the Islanders, started off as baby faces, but that didn't work. They were better and more successful later on as heels. So, taking a nod from history, we're going to have them debut as heels. And we're just going to build them up as this brutal, dangerous tag team. Not very comical. We want them to be scary. Our version of Vince isn't going to bow under pressure to every little complaint. It is going to realize that sometimes a scary heel is a good heel, especially when you're marketing to kids. Kids want to see the boogeyman get beat up. So Haku and Tama are going to be our dangerous, from the wild islands, maybe they're cannibals or headhunters or something, our cartoony Johnny Bravo, I think, was the cartoon, or there were quite a few cartoons who drew on those stereotypes. So that's what the Islanders are going to be. They're going to be that boogeyman from the islands of the Indonesia sort of part of the world. And they're going to go out there, they're just going to beat the shit out of the faces, the Can-Am Connection, and they're going to win the match. They're going to beat them up, and they're going to win. Okay, so then we come to our second match. We're going to do another tag team match. Coco Beware and Tito Santana against Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. Now, we did have Coco Beware. I'm trying to remember how I worked this out. I think I had Coco Beware in a blow-off match earlier in the year, or late in '86, somewhere in between the two WrestleManias. He had his blow-off match already, because the problem is that I wanted Piper and Orton for other things. Brutus cannot carry a match on his own, and Coco Beware really couldn't carry a match on his own either, from what I understand. He wasn't horrible to work with, but he wasn't a ringleader, basically, in the wrestling context. He couldn't really carry a match, and Brutus sure as hell can't. Never could. But Coco Beware and Tito Santana were very, very popular. And although Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov at this point, even then, they're not really that big of a deal as heels. If we've worked with them and kept the anti-America stuff going strong with them, you know, trying not to cross any lines, but try and make them stronger as heels. We're coming off of a loss for the baby faces. The Islanders beat them up. So here we're going to put the baby faces over. Coco Beware and Tito Santana are going to get a win on Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. Probably wouldn't be a very long match. We're just going to let things happen and, you know, give the fans what they want to see. And we're going to go into another tag match. King Kong Bundy, Golden Boy Danny Spivey, Hercules with Bobby Heenan up against Killer Bees with Billy Jack Haynes. Now, there was already a feud going on here. If you look at the original matchup, it was Billy Jack Haynes versus Hercules with Bobby Heenan, and it was over the Full Nelson submission, I believe. Who was the real master of it? Yeah, who's the real master of the Full Nelson? We got it right there. But it was a really slow, shitty match because, you know, two big muscle heads. That's always a problem. It's like a Demolition when they were having their brief feud that really went nowhere with Legion of Doom, aka the Road Warriors. They're too similar. You know, a big muscle guy needs a smaller guy to bump for. Is really how that dynamic works. Two big muscle heads, slow, boring crap. So we've got King Kong Bundy, big, huge dude, Golden Boy Danny Spivey, Hercules, bunch of big ass guys, against smaller guys, the Killer Bees, with their own muscle head, Billy Jack Haynes. And I believe there was also... Yes, so just to read my notes here. Feud with Hercules and Billy Jack Haynes was fine as a build-up. It made sense as a feud. They're both using the same move. They're very similar. Who's the real master of the Full Nelson? But it's such a shitty match. So we're going to pair them up with another feud. We're going to build up. So heading into WrestleMania, we're going to build up this angle where King Kong Bundy has turned Danny Spivey heel. And they've been taunting Hogan. Danny Spivey was actually trying to look a lot like Hogan at that time. If you watch it, he's in the Battle Royal or whatever it is, and he's trying to look exactly like Hogan in that. So we take that, but we turn it into a spoof of Hogan. He's aping him, mocking him. And while Hogan has been ignoring them, of course, they have been feuding with the Killer Bees, who've suffered a great deal at the hands of the much bigger men. And again, because we opened up with what should have been a brutal beating, we're going to go ahead and give the faces the win. Killer Bees and Billy Jack Haynes are going to get the win so that the fans can have something to cheer for. Because now we're going to go into our next match, our first singles match of the night, Jake Roberts with Alice Cooper versus Harley Race. Now, this one was a bit rough, and it was kind of a leftovers match, because I had used everybody else in... No, it was never mind. I was stupid. It was Junkyard Dog was part of our trio, not Coco Beware. That's right. That's why I got confused. It's like, hold on a second. No, Coco was off doing his own thing. It was Junkyard Dog, because he was extremely popular. Coco was too, but Junkyard Dog, hugely popular then. No, I don't think all black people look the same. It's just Coco Beware, Junkyard Dog. Kind of similar beats to the names and stuff. Plus, I was not a wrestling fan at the time. Trying to keep everybody straight in my head is a bit more difficult than if we were talking the 90s when I actually was familiar with all the players involved. I am very familiar with this material, though. I did my research. I looked down and saw Junkyard Dog versus Brutus is up next. We'll get to that. It's just, I made a mistake. I wanted to correct it. It's Junkyard Dog. Boy, that is going to be a terrible match. But it's... Because from what I understand, Junkyard Dog was not good to work with in the ring, and Brutus cannot carry a match. Short and brutal, I think. Anyway, let's get back to Jake Roberts and Harley Race. So as I said, this was kind of a leftovers match, with neither of them really being faces at this time. Obviously, we built Jake Roberts up, well, especially in my version of things, because we've been building Jake Roberts up as this evil mastermind. Harley Race was not a face. But when he came into WWF, they basically just ignored his history, because that was kind of Vince's thing at the time, was just to ignore the past unless he felt he could benefit from it. Well, Harley Race is one of the greatest world champions of all time. I think it's beneficial to call attention to that. So when we bring in Race in our version of history, we're not going to ignore his. We're going to build him up as a crafty veteran who uses his experience and his wiles to beat the younger foes. He's going to be the de facto face in this match. And because of that, we're going to have him work as close to the line of being a heel as he possibly can, because we don't want to necessarily lose him going into the next year as a heel. But we don't want him to go full on heel and start taking heat away from Roberts either. So we have Race will work close to that line, but not quite cross it, so Roberts can be the heel of the match, and Race can be kind of the de facto babyface without turning fully. You know, we've been building Roberts' evil mastermind. It's a clash of wits as much as physicality. And that's the story we're going to have them tell. It's crafty veteran versus evil mastermind. And in the end, it's going to be a very competitive, hard-fought match, but Roberts is going to win. He's going to hurt Race, and with the aid of Alice Cooper, hopefully. You see, that's really the part of the problem, is that Cooper wasn't necessarily someone that you would pair with a heel, but try to make it work. Now we go into our first match involving the trio of the feuds. It's Brutus, Adonis, and Orton, Junkyard Dog, Piper, and Steamboat. So this is Brutus versus Junkyard Dog. And normally I am very against doing anything involving racism or sexism, because it doesn't necessarily work. It puts a bad light on the company, especially in the future. They wouldn't have known it at the time, though. But in order to get some heat going here, we'll have had Brutus be kind of low-key racist in some of his promos against Junkyard Dog. It's not like Piper's weren't more than low-key at times. I mean, wasn't this... No, that was WrestleMania 2, wasn't it? Yeah, WrestleMania 2 was when he had the match and painted himself half black just to fuck with him. And of course, Orton's a Southern boy, so it would not be unnatural at all for him to be a bit low-key racist in promos. And because these two guys can't work very well, again, I've watched enough stuff of Brutus to know that he cannot work at all worth a damn. And from all accounts, Junkyard Dog was just very difficult to work with. So we're not even going to try to get him to work. We're just going to have him brawl and beat the crap out of each other. Adonis is going to come out, sneak out during the match, and help Brutus win. So basically what we're going to have happen here is that after Brutus gets the cheat win over Junkyard Dog, Piper is going to run out because Adonis is already out there, and they're going to go right into their match because that's up next, Piper versus Adonis. And we have been building this into a serious feud. Hopefully it's going to feel like a true blood feud. Nasty. And Piper, Adonis, they know each other well. They're going to work with each other well. And we're going to have them fight like they mean it. It's a blood feud. They're going to just go off on each other. But again, Brutus, Junkyard Dog, is going to have left. Brutus is going to have stuck around, and he's going to help Adonis get the win. And after the match, they're going to paint Piper up like Adonis, put a wig on him, and leave him bloodied and abused in the ring. And I was very tempted to give Piper the win, but there's two things going on here. Is that after WrestleMania 3, we lose Piper for 2 whole years because he wanted to go and try to become an actor full-time. Didn't work out. And we're going to have Adonis for a while longer. So I was left with a bit of a conundrum for this one. Do I let Piper leave in triumph? Or do I make it something like a loser leaves town sort of a match and have Adonis win and have Piper go out on a shit note in some ways, but leave Adonis as a strong heel? I opted for having Adonis win and stay strong as a heel for the remainder of the time that we have him, while Piper is going to, because if I remember correctly, Adonis is out of the company well before Piper comes back, so as much as I would love to do something here and say that we're going to bring it back down the line, it never manifests. It doesn't happen. And of course, there's going to be loud-ass kids outside while I'm recording. Fuckers. Alright. But, I wanted to do the best with what I had, and I did. So that's that match. Let's go on to the next, which is the Hart Foundation, who are the tag champions, Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, going up against Greg Valentine and Don Morocco with Mr. Fuji. So we paired up Morocco and Valentine a long time ago, and they've been one of our go-to heel teams for the tag team division. And the Hart Foundation are also heels. Again, this was kind of a leftovers match. Who am I going to put up against the Hart Foundation, who are champions at this point? And I decided, go ahead and do Valentine and Morocco, because you can get away with doing heel versus heel matches. It's a lot easier than face versus face. It's simply a matter of figuring out which team the audience is probably going to boo the most and letting them play the heel in the match while the other team, again, just like the earlier match with Race and Roberts, one team plays the face, but not quite, while the other one just stays firmly heel. Even possibly going a bit further than they normally would as heels in order to keep their heat. While the other heel team also does heel stuff, just not to the same degree. Or in this case, the other way to do it actually is you just let them full on go heel on each other, and don't worry about it. Let the audience decide who they're going to cheer for. It's not always the best solution because sometimes the audience doesn't know who they want to cheer for. And I don't mean that to be condescending, it's just true. You have to give them a bit of a nudge at times, sometimes. But Greg Valentine is a pro. Morocco knows what he's doing. Bret Hart is one of the best of all time. Jim Neidhart knows what he's doing. I would say they can heel on each other all they want. Let them sort it out. We're putting the match together. They're going to sort out what they're going to do. And then we're keeping the belts on the Hart Foundation. But we want Morocco and Valentine to stay looking strong, because we've been building them for a long time as a credible heel team. And also, I've got as a note here that in order to set up the match, Valentine and Morocco have won several matches with other teams, including a number one contendership match leading into the Mania program. So then we come to the IC title match, and historically this was one of the best matches ever to be on a WrestleMania. At least one of the best for a very long time to be on any WWF pay-per-view, at the very least. And it was Savage against Steamboat. But Steamboat is our world champion. We've put the IC belt on Savage. And this is going to be Savage against Honky Tonk Man. So, during the heavyweight title tournament, Savage loses to Steamboat. It's humiliating, but Savage ends up turning face and winning the IC belt. I think he was already IC champion going into that. Let me bring let me see here. Yeah, Randy Savage beat Ricky Steamboat for the IC belt at WrestleMania 2. That was to free up Steamboat for later when he's going to win the world belt. Right. So Savage has held that IC belt for a year at this point. And he's been turning face. So the WrestleMania 3, it was Honky Tonk Man against Jake Roberts with Alice Cooper, after Honky Tonk Man hit Jake Roberts during an episode of the Snake Pit with the guitar. So we're going to shift things a bit. It's going to be Savage who gets the guitar shot to the head during an episode of Piper's Pit or Snake Pit, something. And Honky Tonk Man has won a number one contendership for the IC title. He has a face-to-face confrontation with Savage, hits him with a guitar. And Honky is going to get a sneaky win after Savage dominates most of the match. So we're setting Honky Tonk Man up to become one of our top heels, and we're going to free up Savage for other things. Up next, we've got Hogan, U.S. Champion, versus Andre. And I know historically this was the big match, but the world title, in my view, should always be the main event. So even if we risk losing some of the audience at this point, hopefully everything will have been built up so that the main event still feels like a main event. We're basically giving them two huge main events for this WrestleMania. So basically, again, if I transport myself back in time in this fantasy rebooking land, I would have tried to get Andre into better shape. Hopefully it would be a bit of a more a quicker pace match, perhaps. than it actually was. A little less Andre leaning on things the whole time and then body slam. A bit more athleticism. Actually have Hogan do some of the work we know he can do because he's done it in Japan. And most importantly, you may have noticed that we have had a very long streak of heels winning matches at this point. Because we're setting up our two big, huge main events. The audience is going to be begging for the baby faces to win. They are going to be so ready for it. And we're going to give it to him. Hogan is going to beat Andre. And hopefully it will be an overall better match, but it's still going to be the same basic finish. Hogan slams Andre after getting beat up a lot. Hopefully a bit more competitive, a bit more athletic of a match between the two, but Hogan is going to still get the same finish, same win. Roar of the crowd. Then we're going to go into our main event, which is Steamboat versus Orton in a no DQ match, which again, add a little spice, since, the Hogan-Andre match probably is going to be the biggest match going in, but we still want to keep people's attention for the main event. We add a little spice to it. It's no DQ. You're going to see blood. You're going to see brutality. And that's how it's going to be built. So we've got our ultimate white meat babyface in Ricky the Dragon Steamboat going up against Orton, who we have been building since WrestleMania 1 as the Enforcer. This brutal, nasty asshole who is not the big top guy. Usually, he's always works for one of the other heels as their muscle, their go-to guy for beating people up, and that's how we've built him since WrestleMania 1. Just this horrible thug, basically. But because of all of this feuding going on and Steamboat helping Piper, Orton has found himself with an opportunity to possibly become the heavyweight champion. He finally gets to be the big shot, which is going to be part of his build-up as well. And because Orton just wants to beat people up, it's all going to get worked out that it's going to be a no DQ match. So we're not only having Steamboat go in against this guy we've built up as this brutal thug, it's also at a disadvantage because no DQ plays to Orton's strength, not the technician of that Steamboat is. Orton goaded Steamboat into accepting the stipulation. So we're going to have a good old-fashioned underdog story here. Orton is just going to beat the shit out of Steamboat. He's going to tough it out. You're going to get your hope spots aplenty. You're going to get your near falls aplenty. And Orton is going to come so close to winning. But Steamboat is always going to manage to just barely get out of it. Whether it's kicking out at that last moment, or getting his foot on the rope, or rolling out of the ring after a big impact, or whatever Orton does to him, he's going to always manage to just squeak through without quite losing, but comes so very close. And in the end, Orton's going to get wore down. He's going to get blown up. The better conditioning, the better technical ability of Steamboat is going to win out, and he is finally, after a great deal of struggle, going to win the match. Afterward, of course, he's going to get beat up by Orton, Adonis, and Brutus. But he is going to retain the title. That's the important thing. Then we let the heels get some heat back. Because that's how you do it sometimes. So now we can go into our aftermath. That has been our WrestleMania 3. The aftermath is that in real life, after winning the IC belt at WrestleMania 3, Steamboat, whose wife was pregnant, wanted to take some time off to be with his wife. And Vince was kind of a dick about the whole thing. It depends on your point of view, I suppose. He put the belt on Honky Tonk Man, buried Steamboat until he left, basically. So we're going to be a little bit nicer. And the other reason for the big beatdown after the match is that Steamboat's going to be injured. So we can let him have some time off to be with his pregnant wife. And of course, our big trio of heels are going to be talking shit the whole time he's gone. Oh, it wasn't that long after that. Adonis is gone only a couple of months later. He was the leader of the group, and then we also lose Orton before Survivor Series, the first Survivor Series. We lose Orton. Okay, I'd forgotten about that. And it was both in unexpected circumstances, which has to be factored into the booking. I'll just read what I've written here. Basically, our main heel team suddenly loses their leader a couple of months after WrestleMania 3. Orton and Brutus stick together as a tag team for the rest of the year, facing off with face teams, till Orton gets fired in early November. Not long before Survivor Series, which leaves Brutus solo. Okay, since Brutus is Hogan's buddy, Hogan is going to convert him onto his side. Okay. So we've basically built this terrible trio heel team, and we're losing them. But Brutus is going to start turning face because of Hogan. And we've also, luckily, we've been building up Roberts. Again, I'll just read what I wrote here. Luckily, we've been building up Roberts as a credible top heel, and Ted DiBiase is coming in June of '87. We've also got some new and returning talent to shore things back up. We'll keep Savage and Honky feuding through the next few months. Savage will not come out on top and will drop back down the card and have to work his way back up. Honky will cheat his way through the year and take delight in humiliating every face who goes up against him. So we're also building Honky Tonk Man up to be a top heel to replace one of our, the guys we're losing. When Steamboat comes back, we're putting him back into feuding with Orton and Brutus, with Steamboat tagging with a newly arrived hacksaw Jim Duggan. Jim Duggan was very, very popular almost immediately. We're just going to give him a bit of a boost by putting him with a world title, or the world champion, rather. We're not giving him the title. We're putting him in a tag team with the champ. Luckily, I think that feud will run its course before too long. So we'll move Duggan onto other things and Steamboat into a feud with Roberts, which is basically what I've been building towards since Robert debuted, was putting him in a big world title match with Steamboat. After losing to Hogan in our timeline, Andre retires. He's too old and broken down to keep going. Personally, when I see footage of him from later shows, it just hurts to look at him, and I feel sorry for him. Just let the poor man retire and live what life he has left to the best of, what he can. So Hogan is going to go into a short transitional feud with One Man Gang, which I believe they actually did or were going to do. And then he's going to start feuding with DiBiase as we start building DiBiase up as the $1 Million Man. The Hart Foundation will feud with various teams, face teams, while ducking the returning British Bulldogs, with the build-up being that after the Bulldogs return, the Hart Foundation does not want to face their old rivals and continues to avoid doing so. And that is fan rebooking WrestleMania 3 with a little bit of tangential stuff, but we got through it in the end. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.